Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. And today's video is gonna be about digestion and absorption, which is the 16th chapter of NCERT Class 11 Biology. So let's get started. What is digestion? Biomicromolecules in food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substances in the digestive system. This process of conversion of complex food substances to simple absorbable forms is called digestion and is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and chemical methods. Alimentary canal. The alimentary canal begins with an anterior opening, which is the mouth, and it opens out posteriorly through the anus. What is thecodont? The mouth leads to the buccal cavity or oral cavity. The oral cavity has a number of teeth and the muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in a socket of jawbone. This type of attachment is called as thecodont. You can see in the image the right jaw has the socket of jaw, which is called as the thecodont. Now let's learn what is diaphodont. Majority of mammals, including human beings, form two sets of teeth during their life. A set of temporary milk or deciduous teeth replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. This type of dentition is called as diaphodont. An adult human has 32 permanent teeth which are of four different types called as heterodont dentition, namely incisors, canine, premolars and molars. In the image you can see the first two teeth are incisors, which is on the left jaw. Then we have one canine and two premolars and three molars. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order I, C, P, N, M is represented by a dental formula which in human is 2123 upon 2123. Now I'll explain you this formula. 2 means we have 2 incisors, 1 which is the 1 canine, then we have 2 premolars and 3 molars, which is why the formula is 2123 upon 2123. The hard chewing surface of the teeth is made up of enamel, helps in the mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the frenulum. This is an important point, so make sure you're noting down all the important points that I will be telling you. The upper surface of the tongue has small projections called as papillae, some of which bear taste buds. Human digestive system. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. The esophagus and the trachea, which is the windpipe, opens into the pharynx. A cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis, which is the opening of the windpipe, during swallowing. Now the esophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly passing through the neck, thorax and diaphragm and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called as stomach. Now let's learn anatomical regions of the human stomach. A muscular sphincter, gastroesophageal, regulates the opening of the esophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has four major parts, which is a cardiac portion, which opens into the which the esophagus opens. A cardiac portion is the one you can see in the image. The esophagus is opening into the cardiac portion. Then we have a fundic region. In the image you can see the fundus is on the top on the right hand side. Then we have a body which is the main central region and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of the small intestine. I have also mentioned the image of the sphincter. You can see how it is. It is a circular and muscular one. So there is a constriction in between which doesn't allow the food to go back. So basically it acts as a valve. Now let's learn what is a small intestine. Small intestine is distinguishable into three regions: a C-shaped duodenum, a long coiled middle portion jejunum, and a highly coiled ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by the pyloric sphincter. Ileum opens into a large intestine. In the image you can see the duodenum is is the C-shaped pipe which is just below the stomach, and then we have the jejunum which is just below the duodenum, and then there's an ileum which is highly coiled. Now let's learn large intestine. Ileum opens into the large intestine. It consists of cecum, colon, and rectum. Cecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. In the image you can see cecum is just above the appendix. And a narrow finger-like tubular projection, the vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. The cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into the 4 parts. So in the image you can see the first part is an ascending one, then a transverse colon, and then a descending part and a sigmoid colon. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. Now this is the diagrammatic representation of transverse section of the gut. The wall of the alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses 4 layers. Now I have written a mnemonic which is SMSM. SMSM. Now this mnemonic is for all the layers, 4 layers, so that you can remember them easily. S means serosa, M means muscularis, and then again we have an S, which is a mnemonic for the submucosa, then M, which is for the mucosa. So in the image you can see the outermost layer is made up of a thin mesothelium, which is the epithelium of visceral organs with some connective tissues. Then just below the serosa, there is a muscularis layer which is formed by the smooth muscles usually arranged into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. Now an oblique muscle layer may be present in some regions. Now there are diagrammatic representation of the transverse section of gut, which includes submucosal layer and mucosa. So let's learn what is the submucosal layer. The submucosal layer is formed of loose connective tissues containing nerves, blood, and lymph vessels. In duodenum, glands are also present in the submucosa. Mucosa. The innermost lining, the lumen of the alimentary canal, is the mucosa. This layer forms irregular folds called as dugae in the stomach and small finger-like foldings called as villi in the small intestine. So in the image you can see the outermost layer is the serosa, then we have muscularis, then submucosa and mucosa. The submucosa is slightly pinkish in color. A section of small intestinal mucosa showing villi. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called as microvilli, giving a brush border appearance. These modifications increase the surface area enormously. Now villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessel called as the lacteal. You can see in the image, the lacteal is the yellow part which is in between the capillaries. The villi are the green ones. Mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus that helps in the lubrication. Mucus also form glands in the stomach, which is the gastric glands, and crypts in between the bases of the villi in the intestine, which is called as the crypts of Leviken. All the 4 layers show modifications in different parts of the alimentary canal. Now the digestive glands associated with the alimentary canal include the salivary glands, the liver, and the pancreas. The liver is the largest gland. The salivary glands. Saliva is mainly produced by 3 pairs of the salivary glands. The parotids, which are nearby to the cheek, the submaxillary or submandibular, which are the lower jaw, and the sublinguals below the tongue. These glands, situated just outside the buccal cavity, secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. In the image, you can see the parotid glands are nearby to your cheek. The submaxillary or submandibular are present in the lower jaw. The sublinguals are below the tongue. So these glands are situated outside the buccal cavity and secrete the salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Now the liver. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing about 1.2 to 1.5 kg in adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has two lobes. The hepatic lobules are the structural and functional units of the liver containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called as the Glimson's capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cells passes through the hepatic ducts and is stored and concentrated in the thin muscular sac called as the gallbladder. The duct of the gallbladder, which is the cystic duct, along with the hepatic duct from the liver, forms the common bile duct. Now in the image you can see there is a liver, and then you can see the green one is the gallbladder, and then you can see the common bile duct. Then we have a pancreas, then we have the sphincter of Oddi, and then the duodenum, which is C-shaped and pink in color. Now the bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum, has the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called as the sphincter of Oddi. Make sure you write down all the important points from this, and I have highlighted them, so have given them different colors so that you can make sure that which are the important ones. So just make sure you're noting down each and every important point from this. Then we have the pancreas. The pancreas is a compound, both exocrine and endocrine, elongated organ situated between the limbs of the C-shaped duodenum. The exocrine portion secretes an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzymes, and the endocrine portion secretes hormones, insulin, and glucagon. Digestion of food. The process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity performs two major functions, which is the mastication of food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and the tongue, with the help of the saliva, masticate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus in saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or degglutination. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus by successive waves of muscular contraction called as peristalsis. So peristalsis is the successive waves of muscular contractions which helps the food to move down. Now the gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes and enzymes, salivary amylase and lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrate splitting enzyme, which is the salivary amylase. Now about 30% of the starch is hydrolyzed here by this enzyme, which has an optimum pH of 6.8 into a disaccharide, which is maltose. Lysozyme present in saliva acts as an antibacterial agent that prevents infections. Now this is a reaction which is explaining the above statement, which is starch is getting converted into maltose with the help of an enzyme called salivary amylase and has an optimum pH of 6.8. Now let's learn mucosa of the stomach. The mucosa of stomach has gastric glands. Gastric glands have three major types of cells, namely my, pet, parrot is a mnemonic for these three cells for you to remember them easily. Now my, pet, parrot. M stands for mucous neck cells. P in the pet stands for peptic or chief cells. P in the parrot stands for parietal or oxyntic cells. Now you have to remember it like this, my, pet, parrot. These three cells you have to remember which are in the mucosa of the stomach and has gastric glands. So gastric glands have three major types of cells and you have to remember them by my, pet, parrot. So M, mucosa neck cells which secrete mucus. P in the pet, which is for peptic or chief cells, which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen, and P in the parrot, which is for parietal or oxyntic cells, which secrete HCl and intrinsic factor essential for absorption of vitamin B12. Now, I have added all the images of mucous neck cell, gastric chief cell, and the parietal cell, so you can have a look upon them. Now, the digestion of food in the stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by the churning movements of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen, on exposure to hydrochloric acid, gets converted into the active enzyme called pepsin, the proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. So pepsin is the proteolytic enzyme of the stomach. Make sure you're noting down this point. Now pepsin converts proteins into proteases and peptones, which are the peptides. The mucus and the bicarbonates present in the gastric juice play an important role in lubrication and protection of the mucosal epithelium from excoriation by the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. So mucus and bicarbonates are basically they help the layer to lubricate and from excoriation by the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. HCl provides the acidic pH, which is around 1.8, which is optimal for pepsins. Now let's learn what is renin. Renin is a proteolytic enzyme formed in the gastric juice of infants, which helps in the digestion of milk proteins. Small amounts of lipases are also secreted by the gastric glands. Now, various types of movements are generated by the muscularis layer of the small intestine. These movements help in the thorough mixing of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. The bile, pancreatic juice, and the intestinal juice are the secretions released into the small intestine. So you can remember this by BPI, which is the bile, pancreatic juice, and the intestinal juice are the secretions released into the small intestine. The pancreatic juice and the bile are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. So this common duct, you will have seen that in the image, which was a hepatopancreatic duct. The pancreatic juice contains inactive enzymes, which are trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidases, amylases, lipases, and nucleases. So for you to make it easier, I have made another mnemonic, which is TCPALM. Tina can play and laugh non-stop. So you can remember this mnemonic, which will make it easier for you to remember these inactive enzymes, which are contained in the pancreatic juice. So T stands for trypsinogen. C in the can stands for chymotrypsinogen. P in the play stands for procarboxypeptidases, and in the A stands for amylases, and the L in the laugh stands for lipases, and the N in the non-stop stands for nucleases. The trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme which is called enterokinase. So trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme enterokinase secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin. So trypsinogen is getting converted into trypsin with an enzyme called enterokinase, which in turn activates the other enzymes in the pancreatic juice. So enterokinase is not only activating the trypsinogen, but it also helps in activating some other enzymes in the pancreatic juice. The bile released into the duodenum contains bile pigments, which are the bilirubin and biliverdin, some bile salts, cholesterol, and phospholipids, but no enzymes. So this is another mnemonic, which is PSCP, Peter Sealed Chips Packet. So P stands for pigments, S stands for salts, C stands for cholesterol, and the P stands for packet. The bile helps in emulsification of fats, that is breaking down of the fats into very small micelles. Bile also activates lipases. What is intestinal mucosal epithelium? The intestinal mucosal epithelium has goblet cells, and I have told you before, the goblet cells helps in the lubrication. They are the cells which secrete the mucus. So the secretions of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretions of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or succus entericus. So intestinal juice is also called as succus entericus. The juice contains a variety of enzymes like disaccharides, for example maltase, dipeptidases, lipases, nucleosidases, etc. The mucus, along with the bicarbonates from the pancreas, protects the intestinal mucosa from acid as well as provides an alkaline medium which has a pH of 7.8 for enzymatic activities. The submucosal glands, also called as Brunner's glands, also helps in this. So in the image you can see, in the first image the cells are slightly purplish in color, so those are the goblet cells. Then below you can see the arrow is pointing towards the Brunner's glands. Now the proteins, proteases and peptones, partially hydrolyzed proteins in the chyme reaching the intestine are acted upon by the proteolytic enzymes of the pancreatic juice as given below. So the proteins, peptones, proteases are getting converted into dipeptides with the help of the enzymes trypsin, chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidase. The carbohydrates in the chyme are hydrolyzed by pancreatic amylase into disaccharides. So the polysaccharides, that is its starch, is getting converted into disaccharides with the help of an enzyme called amylase. The fats are broken down by lipases with the help of bile into di and monoglycerides. So you can see the reaction. The fats are getting converted into diglycerides and then into monoglycerides with the help of the enzyme called lipases. So amylase helps in breaking down the polysaccharides into disaccharides. Then the trypsin or chymotrypsin or the carboxypeptidase in the first reaction helps in to get conversion of proteins, peptones or proteases into the dipeptides. Then we have the fourth one, which are the nucleases in the pancreatic juice, acts on the nucleic acids to form nucleotides and nucleosides. So you can see in the reaction, the nucleic acids are getting converted into nucleotides and further into nucleosides with the help of the enzyme called nucleases. The enzymes in the sucker entericus act on the end products. So sucker entericus, you have explained you in the slide prior to this. So on the end products of the above reactions to form the respective simple absorbable forms, these final steps in the digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelial cells of the intestine. So here the dipeptides are getting converted into amino acids with the help of dipeptidases. The maltose is getting converted into glucose plus glucose with the help of an enzyme called maltase. So maltose is prepared from glucose plus glucose. Then we have lactose, which is a combination of glucose plus galactose. So lactose is broken down into glucose and galactose with the help of an enzyme called lactase. The sucrose is getting converted into glucose plus fructose with the help of an enzyme called sucrase. The nucleotides are getting converted into nucleosidases with the help of an enzyme called nucleotidases. And then the nucleosidases are further getting into sugars plus bases. The di and the monoglycerides are getting converted into fatty acids plus glycerol with the help of lipases. The breakdown of the biomicromolecules mentioned above occurs in the duodenum region. The duodenum region, if you remember, it was a C-shaped one. The pink colored one I have showed you in the image. So the simple substances thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum regions of the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substances are passed on to the large intestine. So functions of the large intestine. No significant digestive activity occurs in the large intestine. The functions of the large intestine are absorption of some water, minerals and certain drugs, and secretion of the mucus, which helps in the adhering the waste undigested particles together and lubricating it for an easy passage. Then we have the undigested unabsorbed substances called as fecus enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocecal valve. So why it is called ileocecal valve? Because this is where the small intestine turns into the large intestine and it is located between the ileum and the cecum. So the name goes ileocecal valve. Now it prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. So valve is it just prevents the backflow. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. The neural and hormonal control. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control for proper coordination of the different parts. The sight, smell, and or the presence of the food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of the saliva. Gastric and intestinal secretions are also similarly stimulated by the neural signals. The muscular activities of the different parts of the alimentary canal can also be moderated by the neural mechanisms, both local and through CNS, which is the central nervous system. The hormonal control of the secretion of digestive juices is carried out by the local hormones produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa. Now this is absorption of digested products. This seems a little bit boring, but I will try to make it as easy as possible for you. Absorption is the process by which the end products of the digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. It is carried out by passive, active, or facilitated transport mechanisms. Small amounts of the monosaccharides like glucose, amino acids, and some electrolytes like the chloride ions are generally absorbed by the simple diffusion. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradients. However, some substances like glucose and amino acids are absorbed with the help of carrier proteins. So this mechanism is called as the facilitated transport where carrier proteins are being used. Now next comes the transport of the water, which depends upon the osmotic gradient. So here active transport occurs because it is the water, so there is an active transport against the concentration gradient and hence requires energy. So various nutrients like amino acids, monoglycerides like glucose, electrolytes like sodium and A plus are absorbed into the blood by this mechanism. The fatty acids and glycerol, being insoluble, cannot be absorbed into the blood, so they first are incorporated into small droplets called as micelles, which move into the intestinal mucosa. Then they are reformed into very small protein-coated fat globules called as chylomicrons, which are transported into the lymph vessels called as lacteals. The lacteals were the yellow colored one in the image I have shown you. So in the villi, now these lymph vessels ultimately release the absorbed substances into the bloodstream. Now absorption of the substances takes place in different parts of the alimentary canal like mouth, stomach, small intestine and large intestine. However, maximum absorption occurs in the small intestine. A summary of absorption, sites of absorption and substances absorbed is given in the table below. So mouth. In the mouth, certain drugs coming in contact with the mucosa of the mouth, mucosa, it is a sticky substance, and lower side of the tongue are absorbed into the blood capillaries lining them. So certain drugs are being absorbed in the mouth because of the mucosa and the not because of the mucosa, sorry. So certain drugs are being absorbed. Then we have the stomach, which is the absorption of the water, simple sugars and alcohol, etc. takes place. Then we have the small intestine, where principal organ for absorption for the nutrients. The digestion is completed here and the final products of the digestion such as glucose, fructose, fatty acids, glycerol and amino acids are absorbed through the mucosa into the bloodstream and lymph. Now the large intestine. Absorption of the water, some minerals and drugs takes place. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues which utilize them for their activities. This process is called as assimilation. I'll repeat it again. The absorbed substances finally reach the tissues which utilize them for their activities. This process is called assimilation. This is an important point. Now, the digestive waste solidified into coherent fecus in the rectum initiate a neural flex causing an urge or desire for its removal. The ejection of fecus to the outside through the anal opening, which is called as defecation, is a voluntary process and is carried out by a mass peristaltic movement. Peristaltic movement is a muscle contraction. Disorders of the digestive system. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common ailment due to bacterial or the viral infections. The infections are also caused by the parasites of the intestine like tapeworm, roundworm, threadworm, hookworm, pinworm, etc. The jaundice in which the liver is affected. Skin and eyes turn yellow due to the deposit of the bile, and vomiting. In the vomiting, it is the ejection of the stomach contents through the mouth. This reflex action is controlled by the vomit center in the medulla. Medulla is the part of the brain, which is the base part of the brain called as medulla oblongata. It is the vomit center. So, a feeling of nausea precedes vomiting. Then we have diarrhea, which is the abnormal frequency of bowel movement and increased liquidity of the fecal discharge is known as diarrhea, and it reduces the absorption of the food. Now then constipation. In constipation, the feces are retained within the colon as the bowel movements occur irregularly. Indigestion. In this condition, the food is not properly digested, leading to a feeling of fullness, and the causes of indigestion are inadequate enzyme secretion, anxiety, food poisoning, overeating, and spicy food. PEM. So this is the last slide, and this I have taken from the NCERT textbook itself. So you can just read this. And the dietary deficiency of the proteins and total food calories are widespread in many underdeveloped countries of South and Southeast Asia, South America, and West and Central Africa. The protein energy malnutrition may affect large sections of the population during drought, famine, and political turmoil. This happened in Bangladesh during the Liberation War and Ethiopia during the severe drought in mid-80s. PM affects infants and children to produce marasmus and kwashiorkor. The marasmus is produced by a simultaneous deficiency of proteins and calories. It is found in infants less than a year in age. If mother's milk is replaced too early by other foods which are poor in both proteins and caloric value. This often happens in the if the mother has second pregnancy or childbirth when the older infant is still too young. In marasmus, protein deficiency impairs growth and replacement of tissue proteins. Extreme emaciation of the body and thinning of the limb results. The skin becomes dry, thin, and wrinkled. The growth rate and body weight decline considerably. Even growth and development of brain and mental faculties are impaired. What is kwashiorkor? It is produced by the protein deficiency unaccompanied by the caloric deficiency. So it results from the replacement of the mother's milk by a high caloric low protein diet in a child more than 1 year in age. Like marasmus, kwashiorkor shows wasting of muscles, thinning of limbs, failure of growth and brain development. But unlike marasmus, some fat is still left under the skin. Moreover, extensive edema and swelling of the body parts are seen. Thank you.